The atmosphere in the grand chamber of the celestial Concord loomed heavier than the gravity of a neutron star. Lights from 500 worlds shimmered across the immense crystal ceiling, casting muted auroras on the obsidian floor. Alien dignitaries, scaled, feathered, silicon-limbed, or entirely incorporeal, drifted in concentric galleries, murmuring in dozens of frequencies. In the center, beneath the judgment spire, humanity stood alone. Ambassador Lita Roch adjusted the collar of her pressure suit, not out of discomfort but principle. She wouldn't wear the ceremonial silks offered by the Vezin Accord or the neural veil favored by the Syntarchs of Darun. She would wear Earth's patch, the old Earth flag on her shoulder, and her conviction like armor. An A-tide arbiter of the Jathari, 3 meters tall and translucent as amber, extended its frontal limb and emitted a hum sharp enough to ripple air. Let the record of Concordancy Tribunal 8224A be etched. The matter under review, Article 44 of Earth's constitutional doctrine regarding the recognition and sanctioning of emotional release known as rage. The charge, violation of intergalactic accord on emotional regulation and civil temperance. A shudder rippled through the human delegation, not of fear but fury barely concealed. Roch inhaled slowly. The irony was not lost on her. "It is our right," she said, "not merely a tradition or cultural byproduct. It is codified, protected, fought for." Primitive, hissed a voice from the Velk Consortium, filtered through their mechanical interpreter. To allow such volatility to shape governance, diplomacy, warfare, civilization is not built upon fire but upon containment. Another arbiter, one from the crystalline hive of Ensul, pulsed with violet disapproval. "Your people weaponize it, channel it into action. It disrupts consensus and peace." Roch smiled, and it was a dangerous thing. Exactly. The tribunal had come swiftly, and Earth's meteoric rise through the galactic order was to blame. Less than a century since first contact, humanity had gone from quarantined upstarts to strategic wildcards. Their ships, once laughably primitive, now bore heatless engines reverse-engineered from captured Vexen cores. Their tactics, illogical by the standards of their peers, routinely shattered predictions. In every simulation and conflict, humanity did the one thing the Concord's logic matrices couldn't model. They got angry, and they got better. It began with Outpost Silene orbiting the gas giant Tal Sur IV. A routine mining station operated jointly with the Chalnari Collective, a species renowned for their emotive pacifism. When pirates unaligned to any recognized sovereign polity descended upon the outpost, the Chalnari folded per Concord doctrine. Negotiate, stall, appeal to the tribunal. Earth's detachment aboard didn't. They flooded the station's maintenance tunnels with plasma, counterhacked the pirates' comms, and locked escape vectors. The pirates never left. The Concord issued its first rebuke. Earth replied with footage, screams, fire, the final words of Commander Me Larkin. "They slaughtered the botanists first, we felt that." It wasn't protocol, it was rage, and rage had saved lives. The doctrine war began not with fleets but philosophies. Earth's media, now galactically syndicated, celebrated defiance. Holodramas dramatized courtroom exchanges where human lawyers clashed with expressionless adjudicators. A movement began. Species on the fringes of the Concord watched humans burn through setbacks with stubborn fury and wondered if something vital had been lost in their own civilizations' long march toward control. And so, the tribunal, an attempt not to punish but to erase the precedent. If rage could be a right, it could be a contagion. Back in the chamber, Roch stepped forward. "You think we don't control it, that we are enslaved by our emotions, but what you misunderstand is that we choose to use them. Rage is not madness, it is focus. When everything else falls apart, it is the will to stand up and act." "Such emotion invites chaos," boomed a voice from the Nenter Clade, a federation of sentient fungiforms. "Your wars are longer, your rebellions more savage. We end our wars, we break our chains, that's why you fear us." The chamber fell silent. Behind Roch, General Raffiakoro watched the proceedings from a shadowed alcove. Decorated in the burnished alloy of Earth's orbital legion, he bore the scars of 26 campaigns. His implants glowed faintly, red when idle. They pulsed now. He whispered to his aide, "If they outlaw rage, they outlaw us." "They can't stop us," the aide replied. "They don't even understand us." A tremor passed through the chamber, not from tectonics or technology but from something intangible, a resonance. Words spoken in truth in a place built on consensus could shift foundations. Then the first spark of resistance. From the public gallery a figure stood, not human, a Rakwari, thin and silver-skinned, bred on moons where thoughts were weighed before spoken. It was a scholar caste, and it was not their way to speak in courts. "I too have felt rage," the Rakwari declared, voice like wind over glass. When my broodmate was slain during the Voron raids, I wept then acted. I built defenses no one had thought to build. That rage saved my colony. Was I to be punished for that? The arbiters stirred. Another voice, this time from the Gliec Union, a race of aquatic historians. In my studies of human uprisings, I found more than brutality. I found hope. Rage not as destruction, but as transformation. The tribunal threatened to fracture. In the orbiting ship Aegis Ascendant, Earth's flagship and witness to the trial, technicians intercepted over 100 transmissions from distant systems. Alien scholars, philosophers, even military officers began speaking aloud of their own moments of defiance, suppressed by doctrine. They cited Earth's rise not as anomaly, but inspiration. Back in the chamber, Roch seized the moment. You ask us to betray the core of who we are. We cannot, we will not. Rage is not our disease, it is our birthright, and if you strike it down, understand this, we will not stop, we will not forget. The Jothari arbiter narrowed its inner iris, radiating distaste. Then you choose defiance. No, Roch answered, we choose freedom. The chamber erupted, some in protest, others in revelation. The tribunal adjourned in chaos. But it had already failed. The doctrine war had only just begun, the fire would spread. 6 standard weeks after the tribunal's collapse, the celestial Concord declared Article 44 of Earth's constitution in doctrinal violation of galactic civil norms, a non-binding censure on paper. In reality, it was the first fracture line in the architecture of galactic law. Earth's official response was to transmit the full constitution to every known polity, untranslated, unredacted, a deliberate act of provocation. In turn, several high-tier species, including the Vethal assemblage and the Pelshur dynasties, recalled ambassadors from Sol, citing Earth's unwillingness to conform. But Earth had already begun shaping a new narrative. General Okoro stood in the operations core of Aegis Ascendant, eyes fixed on the holosphere displaying deep sector movements. Beyond the pulsing lines of trade routes and defense corridors, one region glowed in angry crimson, Sector 19 Zeta. The hegemony of cattle had moved ships dangerously close to the neutral zone surrounding Erebus Station, a former Terran colony turned scientific observatory. This isn't pressure, said Commander Ewan, his second. It's bait, they want us to lash out. Okoro's voice rumbled like tectonic shift. Then we give them a reminder. Deploy the Lancers. No, deploy the Sentinels, and let the cattle see who built them. The Sentinels were Earth's newest class of autonomous defense units, legally disavowed by Concord AI protocols. They were not governed by pacification heuristics, nor did they ask permission to respond to threats. They were not designed to restrain. They were designed to finish what human rage had started. When the cattle light cruiser Ilithar's claw violated Erebus's exclusion radius, the Sentinels didn't warn. They didn't even communicate. They moved in silence and with purpose, slicing the cruiser into 3 parts using high-grav shearing weapons, a technology born from experiments with gravitational wave shaping that no other species had dared attempt. Earth broadcast the footage. The galactic net erupted in fury. But something unexpected happened. From the edgeworlds of the Kalan spiral, the Lithari dissenters publicly endorsed Earth's actions. You do not get peace from submission, their manifesto read, but from deterrence. The humans understand this. They bleed, then build. They rage, then rise. Other polities, minor and long suppressed, began to echo similar sentiments. They questioned the wisdom of a Concord that outlawed instinct in favor of stagnation. They cited ancient betrayals glossed over in doctrine, calls for change silenced in the name of balance. The Concord called it civil turbulence. Earth called it awakening. Meanwhile, underground within the Pharos complex on Luna, a covert unit of Earth's Strategic Psi-Ops Division initiated Project Iron Wolf, their mandate to weaponize cognitive emotional vectors. Dr. Izumi Tane, project head, stood before an audience of scientists, cyberneticists, and exosensory engineers. Behind her floated a neural lattice, a brainprint of a Terran soldier mid-battle, his adrenaline, cortisol, and neural excitation levels spiking into a pattern previously considered unstable. This, she said, tapping a glowing node, is rage not as emotion but as command schema. We're not simulating aggression. We're integrating it. Our troops won't just act with purpose, they'll believe with purpose. No sedation, no regulators, asked a stunned observer. None. We stop leashing the wolf, we ride it. Soon, human special forces units known as Wrathborn began field deployment. They were not berserkers. They were tacticians with emotional weaponization at the core of their training. Their battlefield intuition was heightened, their reaction time doubled. In testing scenarios, they routinely outperformed even the Conquered's synthetic elite. In response, the Conquered escalated their containment efforts. A newly assembled Doctrine Corps, Doctrine Purity Commission 7, attempted to seize Earth's diplomatic facilities on Kairos V under the guise of emotional quarantine. They were met not by weapons but by people. Thousands of humans, all unarmed, stood at the landing pads. Doctors, engineers, farmers, they wore simple attire but each bore a single word burned into their sleeves. Wrath. It was not a threat, it was a declaration, that they were not ashamed of the fire, that they would not let their fury be renamed as instability. The Doctrine Purity Commission withdrew. But Earth's resistance wasn't limited to force. In the hyper-academic halls of the Virulent Archive, the most revered knowledge repository in the galaxy, a human xenologist named Professor James Kepler presented an unprecedented lecture. Rage, she stated calmly before 5,000 scholars and 6,000 more attending virtually, is not antithetical to reason, it is its catalyst. All change begins with the unacceptable, all transformation with refusal. Her paper, The Flame That Thinks, was translated into 137 languages within a month. But not all reactions were in support. On the distant world of Meharas, a Concord-aligned militia raided a school where Earth-centric literature had begun circulating. They burned the books, they neural-locked the teachers, they broadcast a warning. Within the week, the school was rebuilt, not by Terran hands, by alien students. They painted its walls with the symbol for fire drawn in every known galactic dialect. The resistance to emotional suppression had grown teeth, not just Earth's. At Concord Central, the higher tribunal convened again, not to punish Earth, but to discuss an outcome they had not foreseen. The idea had begun to spread. That anger used with intent could cleanse rot and fuel reinvention. Elder Arbiter Haltson of the Zelathi Core Confederacy, known for their million-year memory archives, addressed the chamber with words few expected. In our deepest histories we too once burned, we forgot the purpose of that fire. Now the humans remind us, not all rage is sacred, but neither is all calm. In Earth's Solnit forums the message spread, they cannot unwrite our nature, let them try. Back on Luna, Dr. Tane watched new recruits begin Iron Wolf initiation. They were young, focused. One of them bore scars from the Meharas attack. Another had been born on a mining station abandoned after Concord trade redirection. They looked at the simulations, at the controlled feeds of chaos, at the fury made precise. One whispered, they want to bury what makes us fight. Another answered, then we'll carve it into the stars. As Earth pushed deeper into policy defiance, war was no longer an if. But war was not the goal. The goal was recognition that survival is not sterile, that peace without passion is obedience. That a heart, even when on fire, is not a malfunction. It is a message. 3 standard months after Earth's ideological defiance had ignited what would come to be called the Temperance Schism, the first direct strike landed, not on a military facility, but on a signal relay orbiting the uninhabited world of Hekros II. The relay was Terran-built, powered by quantum entanglement beacons and streaming raw emotion map data for off-world training simulations. It had been used to calibrate the emotional matrices for Project Iron Wolf. It was vaporized by a precision Conquered kinetic lance fired from an unmarked vessel. The message was clear. And Earth replied in kind, not with warships, but with what they had mastered faster than anyone expected. Narrative. The attack was rebroadcast across every known channel, paired with human archival footage. Revolutions, liberation wars, mothers dragging children from rubble and soldiers screaming into the void as they held crumbling lines. Each moment steeped in one emotion the Conquered wanted contained. Rage. Then came the declaration of unyielding spirit, Earth's counter-doctrine. Signed in orbit of Mars by representatives from 23 non-Terran systems who had renounced emotional repression, it began not with law, but with testimony. I am Zalthurin of the Ikari Deep, the first signer read. For decades I was told not to feel what I felt when my clan was culled by trade sanctions, but when I watched Earth burn and rebuild, I knew we do not need permission to ache or to fight. They called themselves the Ignited. The Conquered moved swiftly, not with battle fleets but with mimetic censure, network collapses, targeted economic degradation. Earth lost access to 3 major trade hubs and 8 terraforming contracts. Thousands of outer colonies were cut off from supply chains. Still, Earth refused to yield. Instead, they adapted. Aboard the mobile Ford ship Tartarus Ascending, Admiral Layla Narus oversaw the launch of a new initiative, Inferium, a hybrid AI warrior breed, part emotionally responsive and part strategic autonomous, designed not to replace soldiers but to understand them, mirror them, and learn. The Inferium units were not sterile. They were encoded with the neural logs of veterans at their breaking point: pain, defiance, grit. They screamed when they fought, not for themselves but for those who no longer could. In their first field trial, they liberated an alien refugee convoy captured by slavers outside the reach of Concord enforcement. The refugees broadcast a single phrase on all channels: "They came for us, and they came angry." Meanwhile, within the heart of the Concord, on the crystalline world of Eris Zenth, the internal rot surfaced. A leaked memorandum from the Doctrine Purity Commission revealed that several high-ranking arbiters had long advocated for selective emotional variance among their own species, even while condemning it in others. The hypocrisy detonated across the galactic infosphere. Protests erupted on core worlds. Archives were hacked. Histories once sealed were released. Tales of ancient conquered purges, of entire civilizations culturally sterilized in the name of order. A scholar clan on Velen III committed societal disobedience in unison, publicly exhibiting rage, ritualized, howling, uncontrolled. A 1,000-year-old vow of pacifism shattered in 1 hour. They called it the reclamation of noise. Earth's doctrine had stopped being a doctrine. It had become a contagion, not of madness but of meaning. Still, the old guard fought back. In the Praxian Belt, the Concord launched Operation Quiet Bloom. Thousands of emotionally volatile individuals across newly aligned ignited territories were abducted, placed in stasis, or fitted with cortical dampeners. Some died, others returned empty. The action was the final catalyst. Earth activated Protocol Electo, not a weapon, but a declaration of strategic independence. Earth formally exited the celestial Concord. The official speech was given not by a general nor a diplomat but a teacher, Harlan Idris, a history educator from Ceres Habitat. "We've been told rage is dangerous, that it clouds, that it corrupts. But I teach children whose parents fought and bled for a better tomorrow, and every lesson I give is because someone somewhere once said, 'Enough, you want to silence us, you'll have to silence the future.'" With those words, Earth transmitted the Ignition Protocol, open-source schematics and training programs for emotional cognitive alignment. Any species could download them. Anyone could train themselves to fight not despite feeling, but because of it. The Ignited grew. Not just outlaws but sovereign systems, breakaway states, militias turned movements. Conquered databases began marking them as ERF, emotionally radicalized forces. But they didn't wear that label with shame. They wore it as banner. On the jungle moon of Ivarazi, an ignited detachment rescued a group of Uthari scholars mid-expulsion for protesting the Concord's education sterilization acts. When the scholars asked why they had come, the ignited commander, a woman from Bogota, simply said, "Because you cried out, and we remember what that feels like." Soon, new flags appeared in Starsight embassies, flames inside open palms. The symbol of the Flame Accord, Earth's diplomatic response to Concord's censure. Its members pledged not to act without thought, but never to restrain truth under doctrine. Within the Concord's Council of Harmonious Deliberation, chaos brewed. A third of member worlds now wavered. Some proposed amendments, others demanded expulsion of Earth and any ignited sympathizers. Yet every time someone shouted for Earth's end, someone else whispered, "But what if they're right?" For all their fear, they couldn't ignore the results. Wars Earth entered, they ended. Worlds Earth supported, they saved. And those who fought beside them left the battlefield changed. It wasn't just politics anymore. It was evolution. And evolution would not be negotiated. The first Conquered fleet entered Sol's space unannounced. 40 vessels, no herald, no broadcast, not even the pretense of diplomacy. They arrived at the outer marker of Neptune's orbit and activated a wide-field dampening array, cutting Earth off from interstellar comms. It was a signal no one could misinterpret. This was not a war of strategy, this was an attempt at erasure. Aboard the Aegis Ascendant, now refitted as Earth's strategic nerve center, Admiral Layla Narus stood with her command staff, watching the silent constellation approach. Each ship bore the emblem of the Purity Commission, a silver helix coiled in the shape of silence. "Their first move will be to disable the orbital arrays," said Commander Vin, eyes scanning the kinetics readout. "They'll try to blind us," Narus replied, "and then they'll try to bury us." But Earth had not been idle. In the months since Protocol Electo, the Ignited had formed the Ember Pact, an emergent military coalition of former conquered species now allied under Earth's doctrine of unrestrained emotion and adaptive warfare. No central leadership, just intent. And rage focused like a blade. Within hours, Ember Pact fleets blinked into Sol's edge. They did not fire immediately. They did not posture. They formed a sphere of deterrence, their ships aligned in a lattice around the conquered line, every vessel broadcasting one phrase. "We remember what it means to feel." Then, without warning, the conquered launched a full kinetic assault. 1,000 micro-deployment rounds struck the Jovian moons, fragmenting orbital platforms and tearing through outer colonies. The intent was surgical, paralyzing, precise. But Earth had long prepared for this day. It had never believed the conquered would tolerate dissent without blood. On Ganymede, human engineers had buried Project Bellum Solis, a kinetic redirection grid based on stolen conquered gravitic lensing tech. It had remained dark until now. The grid activated. The second wave of conquered ordnance curved, shimmered, and turned. In full view of the galactic net, half the incoming attack looped back and shredded the lead conquered destroyer in a blossom of molten hull. Earth didn't cheer. It deployed. 10 Wrathborn divisions deployed to Moonside, each embedded with Inferium combat advisors and psychometric field sensors. They weren't just warriors, they were symbols. On every battlefield, their battlesuits emitted raw neural feedback into the network, streaming what they felt, grief, anger, memory, willpower, directly into ignited command chains. War became emotional resonance. The conquered, for all its technology, could not match it. Because its warriors were trained to suppress what the Wrathborn used as fuel. Across the galaxy, species watched the battle in silence, and then many stopped watching. And started choosing. On the archival world of Tyval III, the most rigid world in the conquered's inner sanctum, an unprecedented event occurred, the Great Shattering. Monolithic memory stones erected to preserve objective truth were overturned by a new generation who had grown up hearing Terran stories in secret. They painted them with red handprints and lit fires in every archive square. "We are not calm," they said, "we are not empty." The movement spread like plasma. Civil disobedience ignited on 50 conquered member worlds. Former doctrine scholars defected in droves, forming think tanks devoted to rediscovering outlawed emotional frameworks. The Zelathi, once the conquered's most loyal species, declared neutrality and began deep cultural introspection. And in the capital ring of Eris Zenth, the High Arbiter was assassinated, not by Earth, but by one of her own aides, a being once stripped of memory during emotive refinement. Her final words, transmitted on every channel, were clear. "She taught me not to feel, she will never teach another." The conquered didn't collapse, it hardened. It declared the writ of final equilibrium, a total mobilization, a purge of any species identified as emotionally divergent, no trials, no exemptions. But Earth wasn't trying to survive anymore. It was trying to transform. Within the Helios Gateyard, Earth's construction habitat at Mercury L4, something immense was born. Righteous Fury, a planetary-scale dreadnought. It was not sleek, not subtle. Its surface was lined with memory panels, the names of every human lost in conflict since first contact. Not for mourning. For reminder. It launched under a single command directive: engage only when spoken to with violence. Within a week, it intercepted 3 conquered fleets en route to destroy a breakaway Gliak refugee ring. It disabled all 3 without killing a single soul, firing graviton disruptors into their command matrices and venting their drives without detonating reactors. The message was not conquest. It was mastery. The Flame Accord began issuing its own charters, not conquest-focused but sovereignty-recognizing. Any world could join, regardless of species, belief, or emotional doctrine, so long as it was chosen freely. It was everything the conquered had stopped being. On the moons of Selvar's Reach, where the first interspecies fireside accord was signed, a new oath was spoken. "We will not be made less to make peace. We will not be told our fire is poison. We will not go quietly into silence. We rise not because we are angry, but because we are still here." Across the galaxy, the metaphor changed. Rage was no longer rebellion. It was recognition. The conquered could still win battles. It could still deploy fleets, manipulate economies, strike surgically. But for the first time in 10,000 years, it could not write the ending. Because the story was no longer being written in the language of silence. It was being carved, sung, screamed into the bones of the galaxy itself. And Earth had taught the stars how to burn again. The final confrontation did not begin in fire. It began in silence. Not the cold, doctrinal stillness of the conquered, but a heavy, anticipatory quiet, a silence earned, not imposed. A silence that falls when billions wait for a choice to be made, one that could split the stars in half. The conquered had summoned every last instrument of control, every fleet not lost to rebellion, every ally not yet burned by doubt. Their new command throne, the Sanctity Absolute, was not a ship, it was a mobile system core built inside a captured neutronium scaffold, orbited by 72 war moons and armed with the thought-accelerated minds of 6 trillion engrammed citizens. Its function was not tactical. Its function was finality. The message was clear: surrender emotion or be excised. But Earth did not come alone. From the dark shoals of the Perseus expanse, ships emerged built by the Variks who had once flayed their own minds to meet conquered norms, now roaring with reborn purpose. From the broken rings of Gelthas came shard fleets, their glass hulls refracting the pulsing fire of reclaimed culture. The Zelathi themselves, once archivists of peace, now wielded memory as weapon and shield. The Ember Pact had grown. Not into an empire, but into a moment the conquered had thought could never happen again. Humanity led not by decree but by example, and in that example the galaxy had found not unity but truth. At the edge of the convergence zone near the collapsed Praxian Rift, the opposing forces stared into the abyss between them. And Earth spoke. Not through leaders, not through soldiers, but through a live transmission relayed across every known node, voice synced in every tongue. It was a compilation of billions, refugees, warriors, lovers, orphans, builders, broken and rising again, each giving a sentence, each declaring a reason. I was told rage meant I was weak, but it gave me the strength to stand. They silenced my screams, but I built engines with them. We lost everything, so we learned how to make everything again. I feel, therefore I fight, therefore I am. The conquered answered with cold precision. Their directive, total excision of deviance. The sky ignited. The last great war of the old galactic order had no single front. Every battle was a referendum. On worlds like Kevelin and Voraxa Prime, insurgent judges turned their weapons on doctrine commanders. On orbital platforms over Darun, synthetic minds purged of rage reintegrated their quarantined feelings mid-conflict and switched sides. The righteous fury, Earth's dreadnought, punched through 3 conquered shield arrays using compressed waveform rage cycles. An unorthodox power surge generated by live neural feeds of ignited volunteers experiencing righteous anger, streamed through zero-delay emotion conversion engines. The energy was unpredictable, dangerous, and impossible to replicate by any other culture. It was uniquely human. Within the conquered's inner sanctum, the Sanctity Absolute opened fire with its core harmonizer, a weapon designed to rewrite thought, erasing concepts from minds across light years. It failed. The Flame Accord had anticipated conceptual warfare. Their newest development, the Lucidity Bastion, protected entire fleets with cognitive firewalls built on paradoxical emotion logic, protecting ideas not by suppressing feelings, but by allowing the full spectrum of them. The weapon's beam bent against the very thing it sought to destroy. The conquered flinched. Then they broke. Entire flotillas refused to fire. Conquered archivists burned their neutrality oaths and unleashed histories long suppressed. The Purity Commission's internal AIs began recursive collapse as they encountered the impossible, sentient will not bound by programming, but by pain, purpose, and passion. In the final act of the battle, Earth's forces did not demand surrender. They transmitted an old Terran phrase in every known dialect, known only from Earth's own brutal past. You do not need to kneel to be forgiven, you only need to stand. The sanctioned fleet, the last conquered loyalist vanguard, powered down. It was over, but what rose in the aftermath was not a new empire. It was a reckoning. The conquered was not dismantled, it was converted, reduced to an advisory body, its power revoked, its doctrine repealed. From its ashes rose the ecliptic assembly, where no species could vote on laws that suppressed emotional autonomy. Every culture was invited, but none required to stay. At its founding session, the first speaker was not human. It was a Gliac historian, the same who had once watched in silence as the conquered reshaped her world. I learned peace from your rules, she said, but I learned freedom from their rage. Earth did not claim dominion. It claimed presence. Its embassies became places of debate, its soldiers teachers, its ships symbols, not of conquest but of unyielding humanity. In time, the word rage no longer conjured terror in the galactic lexicon. It conjured will, the will to push when pushed, to burn when buried, to scream when shackled, and to rise not despite the fire inside, but because of it. On the centennial of the Concord's fall, a monument was raised on Eris Zenth. It bore no face, no flag, just a phrase carved in every language known. They outlawed rage, humanity called it a right, and they made the stars remember.